And welcome back to Scandinavian Design 101. I'm Sanna.
I'm Andreas, and we are two Swedes, and we love design. Mm-hmm. And last week we talked about Poul Henningsen as a furniture designer. And
person.
And person, of course, yes. And watch that video if you haven't already. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we will continue talking about Henningsen, and this time his engagement as a songwriter, anti-fascist, and not least piano maker.
Yeah.
And one thing we won't talk about is his many legendary lamps, but we have separate videos about them if you're interested. And this video is a collaboration with PH Pianos, a Danish company nowadays producing the pianos by Henningsen.
Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the year 1928. Since a couple of years, Louis Poulsen had been producing Henningsen's legendary three-shade lamps, and they were a commercial success, resulting in quite a lot of royalties. As we heard in the last video, Henningsen used some of the money to start the avant-garde magazine Kritisk Revue, in which he criticized most of the architects of the time. Henningsen had become a critic not just when it came to architecture, but also the society as a whole. And in 1928, Henningsen came in contact with a person that would influence him to start writing lyrics as well as engage himself in the anti-racist struggle. After performing in Paris, the French-American dancer and entertainer Josephine Baker was invited to Copenhagen to perform at the Dagmar Theatre. Dancing nude on the stage, only dressed in bananas, she caused moral panic, resulting in racist articles in the media, but also verbal attacks from the audience. Racism was widely spread and not isolated to right-wing media. Shocked by all the narrow-minded comments, Henningsen wrote an article in the newspaper Politiken defending her. He argued that the world was a nationalistic, racist place ruled by narrow-minded people. Baker was the opposite, representing free-minded internationalism. Defending Baker was for Henningsen a part of defending progressive culture as a whole. At the same time, jazz music had its great breakthrough in Denmark. Henningsen considered it to be a kind of functionalist music, usable as a weapon against conservative ideologies.
And the theater director Frede Skårup appreciated Henningsen's support of Baker and invited him to create a musical revue of his own. In 1929, this resulted in the first PH review called På hodet, upside down or something in English.
On the head.
On the head, yeah. Literally it's on the head. Which became a huge success, performed more than 150 times and celebrated in the media. And he made the Danish revues a political weapon of the left wing without giving up the character of entertainment. And it was followed up by Pæn og Høvelig, Nice and Polite, in 1931, and På halen, on the bum, it's translated to, in 1932. On the ass. Something like that. And all of them had the initials PH, like Pæn og Høvelig.
We get it.
And Henningsen wrote lyrics and functioned as a kind of artistic leader. Mm-hmm. As with jazz music, reviews were used as weapon criticizing conservatism and racism using satire. Satire. And his political opponents were raged, but the audience came, and for most part the reviews were a success. And later in the 30s, Henningsen would come to do yet a few reviews, but when the Second World War broke loose in 1939, things would come to change.
On the 9th of April 1940, Nazi Germany invaded Denmark, and as a result, strict press censorship was imposed. Defending the border was impossible, but according to Henningsen, the invaders should be fought using a cultural defense. The democratic country, Denmark, was supposed to slumber, ready to be brought back to life as soon as the invaders were defeated. Culture was a way of keeping the spirit up and to preserve the modern way of thinking during the totalitarian occupation. Therefore, only a month after the German invasion, the revue Dyveke had premiere, and Henningsen wrote the lyrics. In a protest song camouflaged as a song about love and marriage to pass through censorship, the audience could hear the following words. Our hands are tied, our lips are sealed. Our right to think we never yield. And we are not captive when our spirit is free.
The revue Dyveke was performed almost 400 times all around Denmark and became a huge success. But the year after, Henningsen went a bit too far when he wrote lyrics for yet another revue. And in the song Så slår två hjärter sött i samma takt, two hearts beating sweetly at the same time. He was mocking the two Danish Nazi leaders, Wilfrid Petersen and Fritz Clausen. And soon Henningsen had the Nazis' eyes on him, and he understood that Denmark wasn't safe anymore. And in the spring of 1942, the Germans wanted to arrest Henningsen, but the Danish government managed to delay the arrest, arguing that they had no proof he actually was a communist. But Henningsen took precautions and slept in a hidden basement in his house. And in August of 1943, the German occupiers imposed a state of emergency and started arresting intellectuals and artists. Henningsen managed to escape, hiding with friends, and on September the 30th, 1943, he and his wife finally fled to neutral Sweden. Together with the architect Arne Jacobsen, they fled in a small rowboat, and after 5 hours they reached the Swedish town of Landskrona. As it turned out, the escape wasn't a day too early. The Nazi Wilfrid Petersen had planned to assassinate Henningsen, but hadn't been able to locate him. So if Henningsen would have stayed in Denmark, lamps like the Artichoke and PH5 would never have been made.
And now to the subject of this video. Let's talk about the pianos.
Yeah.
As a designer, also active as a songwriter and review maker, it was a natural step for Henningsen to start designing pianos of his own. At the time, the piano was mostly a glossy black box standing in the living room as a large obelisk. It didn't fit together with the rest of the furniture and was mostly used for displaying family photos and decorative objects like figurines and vases. The traditional piano was something found in upper-class homes used for playing classical music. Henningsen highly disliked the bourgeois family with the framed family photos and Sunday dinners. A new kind of piano was needed for the young generation, and Henningsen decided to reinvent the entire concept of the piano. The result was the PH Grand Piano, designed in 1930 for the piano manufacturer Andreas Christensen, and exhibited for the first time at the exhibition Ditt Hjem, Your Home, at Forum in Copenhagen the following year. It was made from modern materials like plexiglass and chrome-plated steel, and the shape was something completely different from all other pianos on the market. The writer, Paul Henningsen, called it a huge shining bug with music in the body. It's quite difficult to classify it due to the innovative and highly peculiar shape. Is it modernist or perhaps Art Deco? According to Henningsen, the shape had its practical reasons, just like all other things designed by him. It had a curved lid, preventing it from being used to store photos and other unnecessary things. The casing was transparent, giving the spectator a view of the felt hammers as their movement transforms into sound. The curved legs gave place for drums and other jazz instruments.
But it was definitely not just a functionalist design. It was also decorative and somewhat of an Art Deco creation. Henningsen was criticized both by traditional architects and functionalists. The famous cabinet maker A.J. Iversen said, "This machine must belong to Burmeister and Wine," referring to the Danish shipyard. And some left-wing critics argued that the piano was too avant-garde and not for common people. But when it came to economy, the piano was indeed cheap compared with most other pianos on the market. Andreas Christensen was known to be a low-budget manufacturer, and in 1932, the grand piano was 2,900 Danish kroner, equal to almost $500. In the same year, a grand piano made by the famous piano manufacturer Steinway was as much as $3,000. And it's also interesting to compare this with what the dollar was worth back then. $500 in 1932 is equal to actually $9,500 today. So it wasn't a cheap piano to buy, but it was cheap compared. I mean, it was like extremely expensive to buy Steinway.
Yeah.
And nowadays, the grand piano is manufactured by the German manufacturer Blüthner for PH pianos. And if the original version was a kind of low-quality instrument, the reissue is outstanding technical and musically. The PH Grand Piano wasn't the last piano Henningsen would come to design for Andreas Christensen. In 1935, he designed a compact PH pianette, a futuristic-looking creation, sometimes covered in chrome metal. And typical is the fluid lines and the step-like front, giving it a silhouette very different from all other pianos on the market. In 1939, a traditional upright version of the pianette was launched, and it might be interesting to mention the difference between a pianette and a traditional piano. And a pianette, often referred to as a spinet, was a small-size piano introduced in the early 1930s and soon became enormously popular as an inexpensive and compact piano for the family home. The drop-action mechanics allowed the piano to be small, but the trade-off was an inferior sound. Spinet pianos are no longer made. The sound is not good enough. And they have faded away to become like relics of the past. And nowadays they're replaced by digital pianos, of course. And PH pianos are today offering a modernized digital PH pianette on their website, so you should check that out.
And last but not least, we must also mention the second grand piano Henningsen designed in 1937, the PH Bow grand piano. The lid is made out of 4 curved waves with rows of holes facing the pianist. The piano is supported by 3 wooden legs angled to be less obstructive than traditional piano legs. In a way, the Bow grand piano resembles the classic PH lamp designed in the mid-20s. As a lamp designer, Henningsen aimed to create the perfect lamp free of shadows and glare. When designing the Bow grand piano, Henningsen focused on letting the sound waves to be evenly distributed. As with all of his designs, the shape of the piano was determined by function, not beauty.
No, but they became very beautiful objects.
Yeah.
And this was our introduction to the pianos of Poul Henningsen. And if you want to learn more about them and check them out, you should visit the webpage phpianos.com.
Yeah.
And if you like this video,
please click thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already.
Yeah, and follow us on Instagram. We are called Scandinavian Design 101.
Yeah, thank you for watching.
Thank you.